Hello everyone, my name is Ellie and on behalf of the organisers, Oliver Kinross, I'd like to welcome you all to this session as part of the USA Digital Construction Online series. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our sponsor for today's session, FlowForma. Feel free to submit any questions you have for the speakers at any time during the session. Just add them in the box located on the right of your screen. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists for today's discussion. Shay O'Connor, who is Head of Solutions at FlowForma, Cheryl Vang, who is Senior Process Excellence Manager at Mortensen, Ki-Sok Jun, Vice President and Director of Digital Transformation at STV, and Alex Zinas, Chief Technology Officer at JRM Construction. And our moderator today will be Ursula Cullen, Digital Marketing at FlowForma. Over to you now, Shay.
Thanks, Eddie. Welcome, everybody, to today's session. We're looking forward to some great interaction between all of our panelists and some very interesting questions. As usual, we're always very keen to get business information and direct knowledge on experiences, etc., in the construction industry. And based upon some analysis that I've seen recently, this arena of the digital drive within construction is really important at the moment. We are, according to McKinsey, lagging behind the rest of the industry in regards to our digital evolution. So again, having people who are going through this, been through projects, etc., who are seeing this on the front line is very important for a sharing of information. And as I always believe, the way we're going to progress is if we share our knowledge, we will get there faster. So yeah, so just from a background point of view, Ursula, if you'd like to skip on. A lot of industries, and especially here in construction, come to the table with different different pinpoints to achieving their goal from a digital point of view. So in general, what occurs is problems in projects, or just incentives that go on in organizations, or a new person joins and they say this other organization used to do this great, or I was on site last week and we saw something marvelous. Basically, all of these areas, you've got, as you can see here, data, drones, Internet of Things, business intelligence, process automation. The reality is people attack this issue and attack this area and this incentive from different angles. They're all valid, okay? So they are all valid. They just start you off on the road here. Invariably, what you try to do is get to obviously the end goal, or some way get along that path by incorporating and being aligned in some shape or form. So today, the experiences of the guys here on the call will have touched upon it, some of these areas individually and or together. So all of them will come up at some stage in an organization. So it's important to make sure that everybody has that common goal. Ursula, if you want to move on. The reality is it does end up as a bit of, once this project kicks in and the lovely green light is given to some sort of initiative, and we all know in construction that that green light is sometimes hard to get, especially because you need senior sponsorship, but you do need some sort of amalgam of technical know-how, one, and technical experience, but also that these areas will pull together. And our expertise from our side is around process automation, and the bringing together of workflow forms, document generation to help out in that digital transformation. Thankfully, the guys on the panel have other experiences, so we're going to get a lot more information here today. Everybody wants to become mobile, everybody wants to have their apps singing beautifully, and everybody wants to get some sort of ROI. Now, be that ROI from monetary terms, from time saving, from eco terms, great, or all of the above. marvelous to get some sort of touch some of those points, whether they be monetary, time, or eco. The end product is what everybody wants as well. So you want to have better use of your time, better use of your resources, optimum use of the people involved, and using their skill sets for what they were originally brought into organizations to do. So, you know, you're brought in at a certain level to do a certain thing. You just don't want to get hemmed in by admin and trying to find out, who do I give this to? Who do I ask about this? It would be very nice if all those processes were sorted out. So today we're going to have a few questions. Ursula, thankfully, is going to moderate for us today. And I'll pass it over to you, Ursula.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Shay. I hope everyone enjoyed that. I always think that you need just a couple of minutes as like a realizer, why are we here today and what are we going to chat about, and start getting everyone thinking, I suppose. Because we're really going to deep dive into process automation and digital transformation over the next hour and 30 minutes. It's going to be a really exciting conversation, hearing from some key influencers in the US. I'm super excited to hear what these guys have to say, and I've come up with a couple of questions that I'd like to pose to our panelists, but if anyone from the audience has a question themselves that they'd like to ask, feel free to use the Q&A box as well. We'll definitely try and get through as many of those as we can, either throughout the discussion or towards the end of the webinar, so definitely stick around for that. But we'll jump right in into question one. And topic one is all around process trends for construction. So Cheryl, I think we'll come to you for this one. So across the globe, construction organizations are looking to rapidly digitize. Manual paper, Excel processes seem to be a thing of the past. But Cheryl, what kind of process trends are you seeing in terms of construction for 2022 and beyond?
Yeah, so I'll actually start off by acknowledging that most of the world has been operating in what some might call the microwave era since the late 20th century. And I bring that up really quickly because when you think about a microwave, it represents speed. We want our food hot and quick. And that expectation is true in construction today. So to your question around trends and organizations digitizing, I've seen that the biggest trend is having the right tools at our employees' fingertips. And I say that because many of our employees are out in the field and very few actually sit in a trailer behind a computer. And so because of that, we've been able to digitize and automate manual processes by getting smarter in how we use technology today. We know that most of our employees either carry a cell phone or are equipped with an iPad. And because of that, those are mobile devices. And so we've enabled many tools and applications on those mobile devices so that they don't have to walk or drive to a trailer to do their job. With regard to that, some of the tools that we've enabled for them from a collaboration and sharing of information standpoint, we've utilized SharePoint, Teams, as far as like administrative forms. So let's say that a superintendent is going to transfer employees between projects and they need to notify HR. We've moved away from paper forms. And so we've enabled Microsoft Forms, SharePoint lists. Those are also available on mobile apps, as well as automating processes where it makes sense. So Power Apps, Textura, utilizing robots like CivDot to do our layouts so that we don't have a person going out there and doing something that technology can do.
Brilliant, thanks, Cheryl. Guys, does anyone else have anything they'd like to add in terms of trends, or as Cheryl mentioned, how your organization has looked at the before and after of process automation? And is that something that organizations should be doing?
If I may
Deepak,
just
want
chime
to go to
in.
you?
Yep,
Great.
if I may just chime in, I absolutely agree with what Cheryl was basically pointing out here. I've been seeing a lot of use cases out of the Power Platform recently, especially with Microsoft, and they've been renaming things multiple times. But at the end of the day, it's all about the automation piece that connects different users, different databases, bringing them all in together. Integration is also another key hot trend words that I'm seeing between platforms now. I've seen technology stacks now, once they're starting to open up to integrate with other platforms, that's where we're seeing a lot more collaboration that's happening. I'm seeing that trends through Autodesk platform as well as the a lot of construction-based platform that's out there. I'm going to be talking about digital twin in a bit, but like the whole consensus of the idea of digital twin is integration. So she's definitely on the top pick that I really wanted to talk about as well.
Perfect. And Shay, maybe you could share some experiences that you've seen. I know you deal with a lot of construction organizations globally, and what are people's, top pain points that they're looking to overcome in 2020?
Yeah, I mean, from a trends point of view, construction have started to focus on, I say, we were at the bottom of the transformation digital graph, and that's where it's sitting at the minute because it's been, what I say, neglected for quite a while. That is a bonus to that one is where, because a lot of the technologies that have come in the intervening period are going to allow organizations to make a better choice. They've actually got nearly too much choice now that's out there. There's tons and tons of options, right? So, I mean, guys have been mentioning different systems, all excellent. And the reality is, it then boils down to what your organization needs or what their capabilities are. What do they have a team that can develop things, or do they have business users that want to be more involved? That whole citizen developer drive. So it's very much instead of arriving at a corner shop which has limited options, they've literally arrived to a big supermarket, and down every aisle there's options and options and options and options. So you're better off. I mean, from a trends point of view, we found the organizations that certainly we've dealt with and who we've met, even just in discussions on webinars and panels, where focusing on what the direct needs are, and also what the skill sets are in-house, and what you actually want to achieve as an organization in a sort of a larger sense is really important. So just to sort of summarize it, it's the technology from a trends point of view, everybody's looking. Now, another big trend is that, and there's lots of options. Because there's lots of options, a lot of organizations aren't making decisions. So they're not actually making decisions because they can do that next week, or we can do that in a month's time, or just after the end of this project, we'll start working on that. And so digitally moving along, and the guys on the call here would probably find this quite infuriating, is that when you're trying to keep that momentum going, you're saying, right, hey, we're going to grab this. It's really important to try and get environments that people are going to adopt to, that they're going to keep that momentum going, that you can really keep that truck moving. Because if it stalls, people say, okay, we've done enough now, well, let's move on to another project. But this is a continuous, like, this is, once you start in this, and again, I don't know any organization who's reversed out of digital transformation or become more digitally savvy and so on. They don't come backwards out of it. But yeah, the trend is on the up, that's for sure.
Great. And Alex, would you agree with everything that everyone has said there today?
Yeah, for the most part, to just echo what Shay said, it can be very difficult to try to implement solutions when you don't have strong partners in the organization to help accelerate that digital transformation process. It's a challenge I deal with personally on a daily basis, where I don't have people on the operations side or any of the other business units that can work with us as a partner to develop the solutions that we know are right there in front of them. We're pretty much at the last mile on a lot of these problems, or we're trying to solve for them, but they're not ready to sit down and say, yeah, that's the right solution for us, and that's going to help us facilitate our day-to-day operations in a way that makes sense for us. So I find myself very much reading the tea leaves frequently, and sometimes I start implementing things forcefully because I have no choice in order to make progress. And also, I think that's just the nature of how busy things are right now. I'm sure things will start to slow down in the next 2 years, but right now everyone's so busy they don't have the time for new process and change. They need things to stay static, even though I don't necessarily agree with that.
Great. I think that moves us on nicely to our next topic, which is all about bridging the gap between technology and people. So I think in construction, there's always been this perception, and Shay, you mentioned it earlier on, of lagging behind and, not having the skills needed to take on new technologies. But Alex, let's go to you for this one. How do you advise organizations address, these challenges? And are there different types of people, job titles, departments that should be heading this up, this strategy to actually connect people with technology?
Sure. So I find myself as kind of the lead technologist in the firm, spending most of my time making the business a partner on all the projects that I'm trying to help facilitate for the organization. So I don't try to do it in isolation. Sometimes I'm forced to, but it's very important that your stakeholders and the people you're trying to build these processes with are involved and have some voice in how this stuff gets improved for the organization. So I usually will try to kind of indoctrinate them into what I'm selling, even though it's an internal business decision, before I even pitch the new process or solutions or technology that we're trying to put in place. A second point to that is I also advocate very much for people and process before technology. And I know that kind of goes against the grain of most people's perception of technology, because they like to start with technology and build the process around it. But unless you have a very clear understanding of the information that's flowing from point A to point B, all the people that are involved in why you're doing these things, it's very difficult to create the proper solution that's going to elevate everything. Ultimately, you want to get away from those clerical activities and things that are monotonous, duplicative, or error prone that create quality issues, and move to more people being able to monitor these processes for quality control, and end up with ultimately a product that the business needs to help elevate that particular item, whether that's safety, insurance, contract management, doesn't matter. There's a lot of subjective analysis that goes into these processes, and you want to elevate people in those parts of the workflow so that they can do their job better and more effectively. And it's not just a kind of lowest common denominator for kind of how you're hiring people.
Great, thanks. And Kisok, would you say in your role at STV that you've seen that challenge trying to connect, or trying to adopt technology and get your individuals on board?
Absolutely. So here's the interesting part. So my title actually has the digital transformation on it.
So
One thing that
you're a complete expert then.
not at
Inside
all,
and
absolutely
out.
not. But here's the interesting part, though. Although the title is in there, it's not really about technology at the end of the day. I'm basically 100% agreeing with what Alex was pointing out. It's really about people and process. And the digital component, technology component, is actually a subset to it. The way I'm explaining to people about my role is I'm here to support people in terms of achieving what they need to do. So it should be more considered or treated as more of a cultural or the behavior change, more so than actual technology change, because technically we're already in digital age. I mean, everything that most of the things that we do, it's minimum at PDF level, especially with the pandemic in place. With that being said, it's really more about how do we interact with people, and how do we, I think I'm just sort of echoing what Alex was saying. How do we bring the right stakeholders at the right time for the right process, so that way they become part of the bigger sort of goal and visions here to achieve. I'm actually seeing more of a behavior change from that perspective than actual technology transformation itself. It's people transformation comes first, and then technology becomes the support components to it. And I've seen successful deployments where I get involved people as part of this process, rather than, look, here's a tool, here's a technology, here's the automation that you're going to be using it.
Great. Cheryl, Shay, do either of you guys have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just quickly jump in
Of
and
course.
also bring up that it's also really important in how you package that communication, because the message hits differently when it's coming from your frontline leaders versus your senior leaders. And if you don't have the buy-in of your frontline leaders, it's going to be hard to trust that message. And then also being able to identify who are your decision makers and who are your doers, because your doers are closer to the work. And so they're going to have that knowledge that you need to build a sound process and a good technology.
Yeah, Cheryl and guys, it's funny. I've been at a couple of sort of construction technology summits recently, and more the realization has come that it's that order of people first that makes the difference, because a lot of organizations have gone through a bit of pain over the years in regards to forcing, say, systems or technology on people, saying, here it is, here's this fantastic system we have, now go and run with it. Whereas they don't get buy-in. And even from a human point of view, when you feel ownership in advancements and in changes in the organization, you go along with it. So if you're brought in with it, and we always talk about, for example, process, not being process, being a knowledge transfer. So it's like, this is what you do, we're just going to transfer it into technology. But the only way it's going to get done properly is if you come with us and you actually, your knowledge is part of the technology. It's got to be. It can't be forced upon you. It is literally you, us together going on the one path. And sort of the analogy would be, it's quite difficult to lift a couch with one person. It's a lot easier with two. You're going to get through it a lot easier when everybody joins together and lifts the load at the same time, and you get so much more done. But this it completely echoes what everybody's seen, and this is seen from experience. And more construction organizations are actually seeing that, and they're saying, okay, I get it. We need to actually bring in more people. Might take that little bit longer, but we're all going to be rowing that boat together. We'll get there faster.
Yeah, and if I could add one thing to what Shay said, one of the strategies that I will use to help kind of get acceptance and buy-in is to kind of create, for lack of a better term, like a show pony, like someone who actually wants to sponsor this project with operations. And obviously, there's a huge amount of people involved in operations, but sometimes there are people that are early adopters with technology and process and are more willing to accept the tools that we're trying to present to the organization. And that person can say, hey, foreman or superintendent XYZ, look at what I can do and what I'm doing with the people doing the digital transformation. Look how much better it's making my life. And
that's
inherently lets you kind of laterally start to get enrollment for those processes.
That's brilliant. I mean, that's Alex, that's spot on. It's funny, and you totally reminded me of something in regards to an organization trying to get something in, but they basically went to that lighthouse department, that lighthouse area, and went, right, you want to do this, so let's just show everybody else.
Right.
Because then
that's pretty much the standard benchmark for construction is, unless it makes my life easier, I really want nothing to do with it. And it's just sometimes it's convincing them to just to see the light.
To start. I mean, and those early adopters, they are gold dust, because
Right.
it's going to improve things, but the early adopter is part of their organization. So it's like they're one of us. So if they say it's good,
I will make one caveat: union people are not like this.
yeah,
they want it to be as hard as possible because they get paid by the hour. And they have no obligation to make things easy on anybody.
That's a fair point.
And what kind of characteristics do you guys see is that, that initial champion? What should people be looking out for in terms of that individual?
They got to be senior. They got to be senior.
Yeah, they have to be senior to a certain extent, but usually it's the person also that has a voice in the organization to begin with, and that's respected.
Yeah.
They either need to be well known and understood, or senior and have some authority. But respect.
Both would be great. Both would be fabulous.
Yeah, it's hard to check every box because usually the senior folks are not necessarily the technology early adopters. They're the ones hearing about it from the people that are younger or more in touch with technology and bringing it up to senior level of just presentation.
Perfect. So we'll move on to our next topic then. So I know we chatted a good bit about there around the challenges of, getting individuals and people to adopt, but Kisak, what would you say are other challenges some organizations might face in terms of automation? We know that in construction, deadlines are tight, budget is tight. So how do you overcome maybe challenges around, buying a solution, or is there anything else that springs to mind? Maybe you've had experiences yourself that you'd like to share?
So I think it sort of goes back to the previous conversation as well. I think it's the willingness. I think it's the right message from the right people, from the right location or the right organization level, whether it's from the corporate side or whether it's from the project side. It's that sort of message saying, on this project where our company is going to actually trigger this, initiate this, that message needs to come down, and the willingness from the people who are going to be actually performing the work to actually follow that sort of the message. So, one of the projects I was actually had a privilege to work on is one of the alternate care facility projects when the pandemic hit us. The goal was for the entire group, from design team to construction team to actual operations team. The goal was, let's make it work. So that sort of message came from TIOP, and we all knew it's very important that we need to make this work. So everyone was working 24 hours. Everyone was basically trying to communicate. Everyone was willing to and open to actually communicate and being transparent about how we do. That transparency, I thought that was really critical, making a project successful, because literally in 3 months, we were able to make it was obviously a temporary facility, but we were able to make something stand in 3 months, fully operational. That's like, in construction world, that coordination component was basically amazing experience that I actually went through. But now we're 2-3 years into the pandemic. I'm sort of seeing that sort of amazing thing happened. I'm sort of seeing going back to how I used to operate, that we started to close things out. And I think that willingness is going to be the one of the most challenging part of our industry.
Okay, so you found that when the pressure was on, everyone kind of joined together, and
Absolutely. The goals
it's a
and
very,
visions.
it's a very high pressure environment as well. I'm sure, as I said, constant strict deadlines that you're trying to meet. So I think you've proven that it does work and it can work. It's just trying to keep that momentum going.
Absolutely. That entire automation piece actually came in very critical, because we're first week on a project, right? Which means there are a whole lot of designers working from home, not even from the office. And they had to be communicating with the folks on the fields, making sure that this facility is going up. That automation piece, although it was little parts from every piece, every component, that actually added up, and that's how we made it happen. Whether we were using Bluebeam as for part of the communication piece, SharePoint, Autodesk, it didn't matter what tool it was, as long as we're getting the communication message out there, transferring or transmitting the right data, so that way the building can stand at the end of the day.
Brilliant. That's a brilliant success story. Cheryl, do you have anything you'd like to add there?
No, I think Cusack did a great job at answering the question.
Brilliant. And guys, Shay or Alex, anything else you'd like to add?
Just from a challenges point of view, for me, it's a lot of times we would get the pushback from those who have been in the business a long time, and they kind of, listen, we've always done it this way. Everybody else can do it that way, but I'm going to do it this way. And I pick up the phone, or I write this on the back of a piece of paper and I hand it to this person and to that person. So the biggest challenge for me, and Kisak, you're so right, is getting the wills and minds all together. It isn't easy. This is not an easy. You're literally, and sometimes people don't focus on the fact that you're actually changing the way people operate. So it's not like bringing in a finance system where, we're just going to do these checks a lot easier. Great, marvelous. We won't handwrite them. We'll just print them. Anyway. Oh, fantastic. Or we transfer money now. Fantastic, brilliant. No, this is where instead of shouting at somebody and down 17 floors, right, you now have the device to go, I need to get sign off to do this, bang, bang, bang. And it's changing the way you do it. So yeah, the biggest challenge for me is in general is people. Okay, we have sort of technical challenges that sometimes happen, being offline, being online, those sort of lovely ones. But people and hearts and minds for me is probably the biggest one. And Keyshock, you're dead right. You know, there's lots of technologies that you can use to, once you do get the hearts and minds, plenty of things we can use. And it's whatever fits you guys best, fantastic. But yeah, get the hearts and minds going. That'll be my thing.
Alex, do you want anything to add anything before we move on?
Sure. I don't know if this is common. It's really probably a unique problem to our organization and a few other general contractors in Manhattan. But we operate in the interior space primarily as our core revenue stream. And the overhead with an interior job, especially a short interior job, in many cases, is the same amount of overhead you might have in a large infrastructure or core and shell job. So I have an incentive to automate things that probably a lot of other construction businesses don't, because of the volume of projects we do a year. So we do, on average, 400 or 500 projects in New York City alone every single year. And just the volume of paperwork and processing and risk analysis that goes into our business is extreme. So I've been looking at trying to address those problems with automation, where probably AECOM, Tishman Turner, and other large GCs just don't have an interest in, because the volume, like one person can deal with this, where I would have to hire 5 or 6 people to do contract risk analysis, as an example, because of the amount of purchase orders and just documents that we have. So automation becomes critical for people in this space to scale and to build a business that won't, ultimately triple over itself, which, if you've been in construction long enough, construction's been doing that for the last 70 years, where they tend to grow too fast, too quickly, and all of a sudden they can't manage the risk and decisions that they have to make on a day-to-day basis, and they discount it until they're getting sued. So to me, that is a kind of a construction problem that automation can help us start to manage and deal with the bureaucratic overhead that our people in this business don't want to deal with, so to speak.
I actually
Yeah,
do like to expand on what Alex was just saying.
of course.
So before I joined STV, I was working for one of those global organizations, some of the companies you actually referenced there. So the part that I am trying to get this message across to many the larger corporations is that their automation piece needs to come from higher top sort of strategy level and trigger down into projects, so that way all the processes and the way we collect, the way we do work are streamlined. But the issues that I'm seeing is it's happening in so much of silo pockets within the projects themselves. So that knowledge really gets contained in itself, and we're basically creating the wheels over and over and over every new project that we initiate. And I just feel like there's so much inefficiencies around how we operate in a larger program and projects. That sort of overarching system and structure needs to be predefined from a corporate or the organization's perspective and triggered down, so that way we can improve on what we do and continue to learn and improve on the next project and over and over. I just haven't seen that a lot often. Alex, I'm really glad to see that's actually happening on your side. That's really amazing to hear.
Yeah, it
It's
takes a
funny.
lot of force of will on that.
It's funny you're saying it, Keith, the whole silos, and you were mentioning it earlier on, and this again came up in a seminar I was at last week, and it was the term digital transformation. Most of the people who are innovators, they're all innovators. They're saying that is probably the worst term that we need for this, because the powers that be say, hey, we're already digital. We've got PDFs, we've got, and you're going, no. As Alex was saying, is if we actually organize our processes efficiently, we're going to save time. Don't want to have to root around my inbox for that PDF and to see where the status is of this piece of. I want all this collated automatically. I want all that done automatically. So the big problem that the guys are saying again is that when you talk to senior people about, in inverted commas, digital transformation, they see something totally different. They see, hey, we've got laptops, we've got iPads, we've got, we're digital. No. You're going to get efficient through better process,
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. Moving on to our next topic then. So our next topic focuses on turning paper into data. So construction is obviously an industry that has always had plenty of piles of paper, going from one office to another, through many sites, touching people's hands, etc., etc. And I think that's one thing that COVID has probably taught the construction industry, is to try and reduce and ultimately remove that paper. Um, but I think now that it's more important than ever for contractors to understand and collect and analyze the data that they get, to help make better business decisions, and probably for the future. I think people don't realize what that data can actually do and what it means. Well, Kisak, maybe you have some real life experiences that you can share around collecting data, how your organization has utilized it, and any tips or ideas you can share with our audience today around the importance of data.
So when I actually begin speaking about the data component, I could probably go on
We could
for a
probably have a
while.
whole session about
Exactly.
data.
But what I do want to actually point out here is turning people into data is, I think that's probably the one of the very beginning part that we should all be thinking about. The way I'm actually approaching from my side of the work is basically the very, like, what is the lowest hanging fruit? I'm basically starting from the inspection side. So what are the data sets that we're actually collecting on the field, whether it's on the rail project or vertical projects? Actual inspection data, if we capture it the right way, and if we bring that up into sort of a global data, sort of a lake or common data components, we could actually learn a lot out of it. Even it could be as simple as today's weather was raining, and associating that with the actual performance on the job. If you collectively collect those information based on the region, based on the locations, you could gain so much knowledge out of it, which we're sort of missing out on. And I feel like there's entire components that we could actually leverage and be more efficient on how we could actually treat our projects on field.
Yeah, totally agree. Cheryl, is there something you wanted to add there?
Yeah, so I like to also add that when you think about data, it actually adds meat to your claim because it supports your storytelling on why your organization is good enough or why it needs to be better, right? And so when you have things on paper, it's harder to create that transparency and to prove that, hey, I need additional resources because X, Y, and Z. And so by digitizing and having data where anyone can access it, where you can measure metrics and stuff like that, it makes it easier to prove your point.
Yeah, and I
Very
think that's a
true.
great supportive thing, Cheryl, around what Alex was talking about earlier on. When you get those early adopters, and they actually then, you don't have to take their word for it. They show you the data. Like, that's just, makes such a difference.
Yeah, and Shay, what came to mind there when Kisak and Cheryl were talking was the success story of Sullivan Engineering. So they had all of their processes, in Excel and things like that, but they actually they could now prove to their clients that they can turn around, their jobs in one day instead of two, where before, because they didn't have that data, they didn't really know what to be selling to their clients, whereas now they can actually guarantee it because they have that data behind them. And just little things like that, I think. And that's not, you don't need to be a data analyst to figure something like that out. And I think it's when you have all the data in front of you is when you realize the importance of it, how much can be done and what it can prove. And Shay, I'm sure you've chatted to a lot of construction organizations that have used data to prove ROI or outcomes and things like that.
The thing about it is, and it's so true from everyone, we could actually have the whole chat here about data and the difference that it makes, because it sort of provides all of the fuel for so many decisions, etc. But there was one piece that sort of came home to me, and it regards to people making decisions. And Alex, you were talking about this. Instead of it, getting your paper into process, and digital process would make such a difference and help everything. If all of that data is collected, one of the points that was made before, and again during another session, was that the organizations that aren't doing that now versus the organizations that are doing it now, Like in 5 years' time, the organizations that are doing it have 5 years worth of data. And the organizations that leave it for a long time, they have less data to work off. And Kisak, on your point in regards to at the end of those projects, you now have, it was wet that day, and that's why it took 10% longer. So we know that if we are forecast wet for this operation, there's a high chance it's going to be 10% longer. So we need to do X, Y, and Z. I know that's quite simplistic, but the reality is the more data you have on that, that's collected accurately, that's really important. And that's where Alex's paperwork gets put into, for example, into those digital forms where it's actually done smartly. You're not just collecting free text and unnormalized data. It's got to be normalized data, but the difference is huge.
Great. And Alex, I know in your role, data plays a huge piece of importance. Can you share? And when I was chatting to Alex previously, Alex has a background in consulting, and he seems to have seen process automation over the last, I want to say, 10 plus years, if that's correct, Alex. So for you, what are you noticing with data at the moment, and how has that change been over the years?
Well, that data is definitely becoming a necessary tool for businesses to be able to just adapt to the marketplace and be competitive. It's something we've definitely seen pretty much every industry outside of construction be effective at implementing. Where construction, the problem is we're not really collecting quality data at the get-go, so it's junk in, junk out. You can't do good analytical analysis without trying to read between the lines of that at all. So that's usually where I'll start with kind of any process reengineering is the first process we're trying to re-engineer is just the intake process, make sure we can get quality information from all the different sources so that we can actually drive process change. The next component of that is making sure that the information we're collecting has context. So it's elevated a little bit. Let's look at it over time. Let's look at it in relation to other activities, specific projects. You have to give it context in order to ultimately get to the level where you want to start making actionable decisions on that information and start to pick out those key performance indicators or metrics that actually you want to use to drive change in the organization. And those things should be kind of recycled and reviewed over time. I'm actually kind of going through that process right now with our organization. I'm working with every single department head and business unit to identify those things that are important to them that they aren't necessarily able to quantify today. And I'm going to work backwards all the way up to the data quality side to see if there's issues with the way we're collecting this stuff. And in many cases there are, so that we can get to their end goal. In some cases, the big one right now is project progress. Right now, we don't have a great way to take a snapshot in time and really know where we are on a project. It's entirely subjective, but there are now new tools and products that are getting us very close to seeing that real time, and we're starting to implement those tools and technology. So we've been able to take away which was a problem, a subjective analysis from a project director or a PM on the progress of the project, and actually use scanning tools and technology, BIM modeling and things like that to say, we're at 78% completion across the whole project. This is what you can bill. Here's the status of all your trades. And we'll know with like a 95% confidence that that's fairly accurate. So that's the kind of stuff we're trying to transform towards. And that's not just the paper side of things. That's the more fancy operations side, but we're seeing it across every business process, whether it's safety, inspection and quality control, punch list management, risk analysis on the supply chain side with subcontractors. It's happening everywhere simultaneously almost in terms of trying to address these issues.
That's brilliant to hear.
I actually like to extend one more comment to what Shay was saying. He made a comment about normalization. I believe that is very critical for our industry because one of the things that I'm trying to keep on, or at least stay with the companies who has multiple practice. For example, at STV, we've got designs, we've got construction management, we've got asset management components. So it looks at the overall cycle of the actual built environment. What is missing in our industry is that sort of a standardization of how we flow the information in the data set. Because that's why the silo pockets are happening. That's why everyone's coming up with their own inventions of how to leverage the data the most efficiently. And I know it's a far-fetched and long-term goals and visions, but that normalization piece is going to be so critical in the future.
Yeah, everyone has their own naming convention for the same piece of information.
Yep, right.
And I will call out one company that I know is dealing with that and having problems with it is Procore, which I'm sure everyone has interacted with. They can't deal with that problem because no one understands that every construction company builds their own classification for these processes. There's almost no standardization at all.
Yeah.
And it creates chaos.
Great, thanks guys. So moving on to topic 5, so improving risk management. So Alex, in your opinion, how can digital process automation improve risk management?
Probably really on the it's probably really on the machine learning side of things. I'm actually in the process of piloting a lot of these automatic text extraction and analysis tools that are provided by various partners out there to take what is basically human created information, whether it's contracts, certificates of insurance, purchase orders, whatever those documents are. And what we're trying to do is analyze those things and see if we can find the risk factors that are important to us as an organization, whether those are legal risk factors like punitive damages or indemnification clauses that are particularly onerous and not really working in our favor, just things that are important to us as an organization, how we choose to work with our partners in construction from the client rep side all the way down to how we flow this stuff to other subcontractors. It's important for us to analyze this information quickly and effectively, and people can only do it so well, and things fall through the cracks all the time. Sometimes we find ourselves in a position where we're starting a job, but we don't have insurance in time. Or the right kind of insurance. But general liability, sure, but maybe this particular job's within 50 feet of railroad and we need to have rail protection insurance. And no one thought to talk about that until we started the work. And all of a sudden now we're 100% liable for anything that happens. So it becomes very important to catch this stuff early and quickly. And people right now are the weak link in this process because no one's going to feed it to us. We have to subjectively analyze this stuff on our own. Sorry, I can't hear you, Ursula.
Sorry. Shay, do you want to add anything there?
Yeah, no, it's funny when, again, just not my learning, but learning from others that I had picked up, was when you bring people into the equation and risk being one of the largest areas, that is when we find in general senior stakeholders raise their eyebrows and go, okay, so this could involve, as I say, insurance problems. This could involve, yeah, okay, now I'm interested, right? And it can be something as straightforward that at the project preparation, project initiation, you have this process in place where all of these items are checked off. And if something isn't there, it kicks off another thing, and that is in place so that when it comes later on in the project, hey, we're covered. Why? Because we've learned, we know that's what you got to do. But if you have somebody who's meant to have it on the back of a piece of paper, not great, or didn't read that email, or no, we can't go past this step until these things are done. I mean, that is so important.
Yeah, and luckily we're starting to see that pressure also from the bank and the carrier side as well, which has become something that I feel very excited about. Like supply chain management risk analysis it was what I consulted for 20 years ago. And construction's just now starting to look at the things that the banks and pharma was looking at the turn of the century when they were evaluating their supply chain. It's almost scary to think, like, why haven't you been doing this for the last 25 years?
Totally.
And guys, before we move on, Cheryl Keesock, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I'll jump in really quickly. I would like to add that an improvement for risk management when you digitize is that you can actually create a single source of truth. You're not running to multiple places to figure out who's got the most accurate or correct information. In addition to that, we're not being old school and putting all of our files in a file cabinet. So you can control access, who can have access to what folder, to what document. And then also, in the event that there is a catastrophic event and a tornado comes through and wipes out your building, well, if all of your great information is in that file cabinet and that building's gone, good luck, your information is gone. Versus when you digitize, if you're in the cloud, that data is spread across different data centers. And so if one data center gets wiped out, you still have the other data centers that's backing you up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cheryl, I don't know which is the horror story there, the hurricane or the fact that people have all their files in filing cabinets. I don't know which is worse. We'll leave that up to the audience to decide. Kisak, would you like to add anything before we move on?
Absolutely. I'm just going to say one thing. Cost loaded schedule, as simple as that. I mean, again, if we look at it from the data perspective, that could minimize a lot of risks that we could do, but it's simple, and labor effort is required. If we could actually automate all those components, there's going to be a lot of risk that we could prevent. Just want to call that out.
Yeah.
And not many people actually practice this for some reason.
Great point.
And just a small point, they introduced this into hospitals, and on Alex's point, like decades ago, in like the checklist manifesto and that sort of, you know, we got to do all of these things before we do the next thing. And then when we've done those things, we got to do these things before we do the next thing. That's to do. Who's checking that? And you see it all the time. You know, construction needs that.
Yeah, 100%. So guys, I know we were chatting a lot about different solutions, different tools. So let's talk about connecting the data and even just connecting multiple solutions and multiple sources. So Shay, can you share some examples of how organizations have successfully integrated tools or solutions, and what benefits have they seen from doing this?
Yeah, so another large topic, but it's quite well straightforward in my Kisak. You actually mentioned this at the very start of the whole chat here. A lot of organizations have some core systems already in place. Okay, so and they're going to use them regardless. And when they want to get a bit more efficient and so on, they want to bring in other layers on top of that. The big thing here is that your layer has to be able to talk to those systems. So instead of getting silos, they're all over the place, that talks to that maybe, but it doesn't talk to that one, but we don't have, that's okay. We'll just fill in the information anyway, because I looked it up. And now it just spreads like a virus throughout the organization, where you get all this data floating around. That's pretty much, it's actually worse than useless, because it can actually make you make bad decisions. So the groups that we sort of have dealt with they've realized that, again, this is not a scenario of just throwing in tech, but when they have those core systems, and they can be your, you know, finance, HR, your personnel systems, all that sort of thing, you know, your logistics systems, whatever. When you want to then get to an optimal efficiency level, and you got to start somewhere, and you got to, it's, you know, it's an ongoing endeavor. But if you have a consistent layer that talks to all those, that's the most important thing. Because Cheryl, you said it earlier on, this one source of the truth. I mean, it's funny. It's things. It used to come up all the time. One source of the truth, one source, and then people say, "Oh yeah, okay, that's fine." Then we talk about it, this. But the reality is, it's one of those foundations that is so important. Can't take that for granted. Got to be one source of truth. It has to go in. Kisak, you're talking about the inspection data and so on. If that's going into the one place, and then that's pulled out again from that one place, from this layer, massively important. Got to avoid the silos. Get the right integrations going. Like whatever comes in, that layer has to talk to your systems. Full stop.
Thanks, Shay. Guys, do you want to add anything there, Alex?
I could go into the challenges if you like of data integration. If you like. It's definitely it requires a special set of skills to do it efficiently. There are a lot of tools that have plug and play kind of integrations between different point solutions and your on-prem utilities, but by no means is it kind of an easy task in the long run. You really want to understand what pieces of information each one of your solutions really needs. What stuff is it going to intake? What stuff do you want to spit it back out? And frequently, they're not really going to play nice with each other between the systems. So you actually have to go through the effort of transforming that information so they can be consumed back and forth. What I would also then recommend is that you have a data warehouse or a data lake in place to act almost as kind of like an intermediary between everything. So at least you have at least one source of truth, back to Gisak's point, and making sure that we have one place for everything that ultimately acts as kind of the brain and orchestrating everything across all the different environments, because construction is very much kind of adopted to the SaaS world, and it's very difficult to rely on one partner to move information from one place to the other, or rely on their app marketplace to hopefully integrate with the other products. And if you're using any one of the low code, no code tools out there, you could either use one of their preferred partners, which could be something that you may not be interested in, or you have to program all this stuff on your own, which also could be a barrier to manage. So I usually recommend that you pick a very strong iPaaS partner, and bundle that up with a nice data lake solution, whether that's one of the public cloud solutions, and use that as a way to kind of orchestrate everything across all the environments, because at least it'll make you agile enough to deal with the changing world as things kind of move from one partner to the next.
I think that's a really good point, Alex. Yeah.
I want to expand on Alex's points there. So our industry is very unique in a way that we've got a different sort of data set that's looking at from organization or the corporate side, as well as we've got different data sets from at a project level, as well as like every solution's got its own sets of information. I believe the data governance for our industry is going to be very unique to what we do and how we deliver. And that's something that we should start to think about how we could actually put that together, because that will drive that whole conversation about the data efficiencies and how do we bring multiple solutions into a single bucket, data lake, data warehouse, data mart, all that, right? The data governance is going to be the key component that I see that we need to start addressing for our industry.
Yeah, it's pretty much non-existent. You have to build your own solutions around it is the problem.
Yeah.
And Alex, you mentioned low code and no code there as part of your statement. So do you think that, and guys, this is open for everyone's opinion, but do you think that, 99 or what percentage of organizations are actually looking at no code, low code, or is that the route for construction right now? It seems to be a trending topic.
It's definitely one of the more common and easily accessible ways to approach things. I know a lot of CIOs and CTOs have been sold the idea of citizen developer over the last 10 years, and which is why it became a coined term. And there's value in taking on that model. I think it really depends on what kind of resources you can acquire as an organization. So if you have the resources to bring on software developers, and you're willing to put in the money and the time to deal with that life cycle, there can be value in that. However, if you are finding yourself being able to work with people that are closer to the business process or on the analyst level, low code and no code tools would really be the ideal solution. And also because you could rapidly prototype things for the organization to test and play with in some cases almost real time, depending on how complicated the process or tool you're trying to replicate is. So there's a lot of value out of those tools for at least showcasing things and even using them as ways to decide if you want to do real software development or not. And back to also data governance, for data governance, I pretty much only use no code and low code tools because they're very quick processes you can set up for doing your data master management practices for projects, vendors, subcontractors, cost code management, whatever we were talking about here. It's very quick those are things that you need, and almost no product inherently includes it as part of their platform for some reason.
Okay. Shay, Cheryl, anything you guys would like to add?
Well, just when I said at the sort of the start of the whole chat, it's the one advantage that construction has over other organizations who started to do a lot more digital work, is that what's available now is pretty neat. So the whole low code, no code, as Alex is saying, that wasn't so great 6-7 years ago, you know. So it's there now, and you can achieve a hell of a lot without having to become proficient, at technically proficient. And I have to own up to the fact that I was a developer, so that was my game. I was a developer and then an analyst, etc. So I loved the coding. I was all stuck in it for a long time, and then when low code and no code came along, I didn't believe it. So, and part of me didn't want to believe it. The reality is, it's there. It achieves so much, and I think for construction, it is actually an opportunity to get onto that track and start moving along quite quickly and catch up, we hope.
Brilliant. Yeah, completely agree, Shay. Kiosk, is there anything you want to add before we move on?
So because this is the panel, I like to actually talk about the ideal situation here. With the release of no-code, low-code solutions, ideally, the way that I'm trying to sort of change people's behavior is the actual deployment strategy. Because if we could have some sort of a minimum governance in terms of that covers the cybersecurity components, I believe we should be massively distributing those tools in the hands of actual people who's going to be on the field or at the office, who's going to be actually leveraging those tools to continuously innovate. Because if you have the right tools, the innovation could happen everywhere. And I just feel like we're tying ourselves or limiting ourselves because we don't give that flexibility to the hands of the people who's actually doing the work.
Yeah, no, I think it makes total sense.
I'd like to
I think
quickly jump in on that one. Because when you think about low code, no code, I came from a financial services background. And so we were highly regulated, SOX compliant, all of that. And so from an IT org structure, we have the full shebang of everyone you can think of in IT lives in that structure exists. You come to construction and we're not regulated by SOX or any of that stuff. And so we do have IT departments, but it's not staffed the way you might find in the financial services industry. And so
yeah,
because of that there's that loss of knowledge. And so it's ideal to have a low code, no code because construction operates differently from financial services.
Yeah, I will reinforce that. That's absolutely true. I've been given the gift of being able to do my own software development in-house, but it is not practical for most. It's a lot.
brilliant. Thank you, guys. So I know we kind of drifted off there slightly, but let's move on to topic 7, which is around delivering customer experience. So again, another topic that I'm sure we could spend a lot of time chatting about, and something that seems to be really trending in construction at the moment. So we understand that it's vital for contracting businesses to deliver really, really great customer service, and customers are now demanding, quicker closing times, granular insights into projects, reevaluating relationships with technologies and things like that. But Kisak, maybe you could kick off by sharing your opinions on how process automation technologies can support or improve customer experiences.
Absolutely, I've got so much to say about this one for sure. Uh, I think when I think of customer experiences, I dive away straight into the digital twin component of the process here. When we talk about digital twin, we think of 3D, but it's really the data part is what drives the digital twin, and that's where we're basically talking about the automation piece. Process automation will come in to continuously improve on how we experience. For example, on the construction side, we may be working with one of the field inspectors on site. How do they actually experience? What do they need to go through to collect their information? How are we capturing the information, and how are we processing the information so that way next time he goes out there, we're covering his safety issues, we're covering his work efficiency levels. Like, how do we actually improve on this? It could only be told by the data that's been collected. Otherwise, it's going to be just personal storytelling components, right? So that's where I emphasize a lot of our services to our clients about their experiences. What is it that they go through to drive their decision points? those decision points could only be identified if we have enough data points that are being collected.
Great. Cheryl, Alex, Shay, anyone open up to the room? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'll add that when you do process automation, it improves the customer experience because it sets the expectation. And so it removes a lot of the unnecessary stress of every time I'm going to interact with the customer or the customer interacts with me, the output's going to be different, right? And so when you automate it, they're always going to consistently get what they expect, and that improves the customer experience. And then also, it also creates transparency. So people often think customer is the people that hire you to build things, but sometimes your customers are the folks within your organization working on things for you. And so that customer experience also improves because you can see along the way where the bottleneck is in the process, what the processing time is, cycle time is, and you just get better over time because it's automated. You can see you have data to support your claims and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, brilliant point. Great. Shay, is there anything you'd like to add?
You literally, Cheryl, you took the words out of my mouth. It was about standardized outputs. We had one organization that basically wanted to create a brand. And the brand wasn't just what they produce from a building point of view, but it's how they supported the customers so that it was always impeccable. And the only way that they felt they could do that was having standardized outputs, reports, etc. Everybody got to see the same thing. The terminology was always the same, no matter who was inputting. So well, people change coming in and out of projects, but it was always remained the same how they saw their data. One, it was accurate, but two, was standardized. That customer experience, that evokes trust, and it builds that relationship where, are you sure these are accurate? It takes away a few of those questions because after a while they get to see that this is accurate, this is on time. Okay, you might agree with it sometimes, but it's definitely has come from the same sources. But yeah, standardizing outputs for me from a customer point of view, and if they can be involved in the process, fantastic. That's even another step above again, where they actually receive the link to be involved and they put in their information and so on and so forth. That's even better. But yeah, I think that it's and again, with the tools that are available now, that's ultimately very achievable.
Yeah, and it's knowing those possibilities, Shay, is so important as well, especially when we go back to our original point is overcoming challenges. I suppose everything is kind of tying around in full circle. It's having all of those elements to help you overcome those particular challenges, and that might be one of those. Alex, before we move on, would you like to add anything?
I have nothing specific in this area. I
Perfect.
don't really touch our customer experience directly with our tools as much.
That's no problem at all. But yeah, I hope the rest of the guys have covered enough there for the audience. And that concludes our panel discussion. So thank you so much to our panelists for that really interesting conversation. If anyone has any questions, please pop them into the chat. We have a couple of minutes at the end set aside to just go through any questions. If you want to ask any of our panelists individually a question, feel free to pop them in there and I will ask them at the end. But for now, Shay, I'm going to hand over to you.
Great, thanks. Just from a background point of view, guys, how we are here and why we are here. We've been dealing with construction companies in countries literally going from New Zealand over to the west coast of the States for years now, and are lucky enough to have a hell of a lot of users on our platforms. We sit in Office 365, so we're an app in Office 365. We are a no-code platform. So what that means is that you can create your processes without the need to code. So just going back on what the guys were talking about during our conversation, it's very easy to get your digital processes up and running when you don't have to code them and you can do them yourselves. And we have an environment where you can give sandboxes to individuals where that can move through and be promoted to UAT, etc., before they go live. So you can get that innovation going. But we're getting a lot of accolades at this stage, and we've been sort of pointed as tech magazines, etc., as top 10 construction solution. And it is because the timing is right. So the timing is right for construction organizations to become more efficient with their process, and the tools, lots of great tools out there, and we're one of them. And I say we're top 10 where you can create the processes yourself. Just move on. So again, we just bring together, I mean, before I'm going to give you a quick run through and a really short run through the environment, but it is, when you're in no code environment, you do get the opportunity to create things quite rapidly. The great thing about that is that when you get feedback from your internal clients, when they want things changed or done slightly differently, etc., you can do it quite fast. So when you do that really fast, you get a lot of buy-in. So it is all a knock-on effect, the domino effect, that when feedback is listened to, people get to see their input firsthand. These are just some of the small examples that we have from some of our construction clients, and some of the types of processes varied. They can be internal, external, on-site, on mobile apps, etc. But all done through no code. Now, what I'm going to do is just show you around FlowForma quite quickly, because I know we need to have a bit of time for Q&A, and we've got questions coming in. So I'm just going to show you my screen. And FlowForma, as I say, is in Office 365. It's an app in Microsoft Office 365. Being in that environment, we can all of your data is actually held within your tenancy always. You can connect to all your databases, but we never have the data. So FlowForma does not have the data. It stays in your Office 365 tenancy. This would be a kind of a typical landing page for some of our clients where they have general information. And that is a coincidence. There's a news feed there on the right-hand side with today's webinar, but then links to different processes. Now, and you can have different landing pages with different links. You could have same colors, but different processes here. But just to give you an idea, you could have processes, and all of these processes and all of these forms are automatically created. I'm going to show you this now in a second. And one of the unique things we have in FlowForma is that you get to see the steps in the process across the top all the time. So what's involved in this process? And as somebody said to us once, using FlowForma, the byproduct of it was that people got educated in the processes because they could see what's involved. They could see the steps are involved, and be they sequential or parallel, because you can have them as both. So you could have multiple steps going at the same time, but you get to see where you are and what you need to do. That's just an example of one process, but another process quite different, but you have that familiar look and feel because they're automatically generated. So this would be a concrete pre-pour. You can see it's a totally different look and feel, but you have the familiarity from the first process. Now, this is all on purpose. This is all for adoption. So the stronger interface that you have that is similar consistently means that when you get buy-in for the first process, you get buy-in for the second and third and fourth, etc. Now, how does this work, and how is it's good to use? Well, if I just pop into the background quickly, I'm just going to look at that concrete pre-pour. Now, we have a single environment here for all of the needs of your process. So this is our designer. On the left-hand side, you see the steps in the process and the data that is either being edited and or viewed. You get to see a preview of what the form will look like. And in the middle, you get to add rules to the process. Now, depending on where you are in the process, you have different rules, all about how the workflow moves. What do you get to see? What sort of data integration is required? And this can become very detailed, but it's all done through no code. What sort of communications do I need here? You've got sending of emails, you've got the creation of documents, barcodes, QR codes, conversion to PDFs. You've got management of work items, and they are the steps in the process. So we can keep an eye on those work items if I wanted to put in alerts, if I wanted to do reassignments. But the big thing is, and again, this is because you're dealing in a no-code environment, is the ability to create and make changes really quickly. I mean, I can put in a new question we call fields questions. Let me see, are there safety issues? So I'm just going to put in a quick question here. And I'm going to make that a yes, no. So these are all the different options you have, and I'm going to make it required. Great. So I just add that in to that step. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that up to the top. So and you see here on the right-hand side, it is automatically doing this for you. So you don't have to, and that's the cool thing about the no-code environment. You don't have to create the forms, they just do it for you. You can edit them if you wish, because we have an editor in here. You can edit the form. So you've got a visual form designer, so you can change things around. But what I'm going to do here is actually, I'm going to add a step in here. So, and you have the option of adding a new step or adding an existing step. So what I mean by an existing step would be, okay, something I created before. So I've created something before. I've got lots of steps here that I may need to reuse. So let's say safety observation. Great, I've done that before. I'm going to copy that step in. So that step comes into the process, and I actually want to have that as the second step. Now, if I just click on it, that's after bringing in that step for me, because I had something like that already for safety observations. So I'm reusing my components really easily, but I'm going to actually make that invisible because I may not need to see that all the time. Now, FlowForma adheres to lean methodology, so you should only ever see what you need to see. But what I'm going to do is here, behind this rule, or behind this question, I'm going to put a rule. So I'm going to do a hide show step rule. Straightforward logic. So I'm going to name it safety. What are my conditions? And again, this is where you get the whole no code element kicking in. So I'm just going to work off logic. So here in this, if I'm under this question, are there safety issues? I'm saying if that equals yes, what am I going to do? Now I could make, this could be a more complex rule, but we'll just keep it simple. So what's my action here in the steps? The safety observations, I want to show that. Now I could do more things, but I'm just going to do that. Great. So let's keep an eye on this one. And I'm actually going to preview it for myself. So here is my process, and this is my preview. That's what would appear when somebody clicked on it. Great. But here are the safety issues. If I said yes, my safety observation details kicks in straight away. So your forms can become very dynamic just based upon your logic, and they will shrink, and so they'll contract and expand also depending on the logic that you put into the system. Now, I'll be killed if I keep that, so I'm not going to save it. So in your process, so here if I go back to home just for a second, this is a default landing page, for example, where you have lots and lots and lots of processes. Again, they can be distributed nicely. They can be distributed as links. They're automatically rendered for the mobile app. So you've got the opportunity, literally as soon as you create the process, it's automatically rendered for the app. So you can have people mobile straight away. When we were chatting earlier on, Kisak was saying that to empower people to help innovate, you can give people sandboxes. They can come up with their ideas of what they think that could be done, and they can be then promoted. We have a whole governance area for promotion of processes before they're considered for live. So they can be promoted up to a QA environment and then validated, and if they pass, then they can become live and everybody can use them. But you can literally do any process you like. Once you break it down, you can connect to your data sets. The forms are going to be created automatically. You can edit the look and feel should you like, but you can turn around these processes in a really timely manner. You're talking 5-6 times faster than, and we have stats to back that up, versus low code. So we involve no code in our processes, in our creation. So the easiest way of finding that out is actually by trying it out. So you can get a trial at any time. It's just an app on Office 365. You can have it set up in your environment, or we can give it to you, and you can give it a go. Okay, Ursula, just go back for the Q&A.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Shay. It was really great to see an actual, like a demonstration of the tool, especially after chatting about the different types of solutions out there for the construction industry. It's always really great to see something, and I know that was quite short. So we do have a team of specialists who can give an organization a personalized demonstration at any time as well. So if anyone is interested in that, please just follow up with us post webinar and we'd be more than happy to get that set up for you. Shay, this slide here, I really like it, and you chatted a little bit about there just at the end of your demo about, you know, the achieving or the savings achieved by some of our customers. So this screenshot here is actually a part of our construction infographic, which is in the handouts for any of our attendees who would like to download. There's some really nice info in there, kind of brings you step by step through how to kickstart process automation in your organization. But I really like this timeline and kind of breaks everything down nicely, I think. And then, yeah, having those savings at the end too, just to prove internally. And, you know, we have so many success stories, you know, especially in construction and case studies on our website if people want to read more of those, to hear how other organizations have used the no-code FlowForma process automation tool to automate their businesses. But before we let everyone go for the day, we'll just have a quick jump into our questions. So if I could ask the panelists to join me again, that would be great, just so we could chat through some of these. Shay, while you're here, I'll pop this one over to you, as I think you might be the best person, no, you will be the best person to answer this. Someone was asking, is it possible to build reports and dashboards in FlowForma?
Yeah, so the big thing, and again, we covered this in the topic earlier on, or in one of the topics earlier on, is the collection of normalized information. So FlowForma stores your data centrally. It can also put the information into your separate databases, etc. But yes, you can create dashboards per environments. You can connect your information to the likes of Power BI, because we sit in the Office 365 ecosystem. And again, Alex was saying earlier on about putting information into a data set, that also helps in regards to normalizing and bringing everything together so that it's all contained in the one environment. So the quick answer is yes, but you can do it in many ways.
Brilliant, thank you. And Cheryl, this one, would you mind taking this next question? So when you started your digital transformation journey, how did you decide what process to automate first?
Yeah, so what usually happens is I would work with my customers and I'd ask them, what is your critical function? Meaning at the end of the day, if stuff hits the fan and this doesn't get done, is the world going to end? And that's how you identify very quickly what needs prioritization and working on first. And then of course, you start to realize when you're working on those critical things that there are bleed offs. So there are other sub processes that needs to happen for it to be true. And so if you start at the most critical, you'll eventually get down to the other like day 2 items.
Hmm. Okay, brilliant. Keesock or Shay, do you guys want to add anything to that?
I think you're dead right, Cheryl. And sorry, Kisak. We always found it's funny. Some organizations started off with a complex process, you know, and think, oh, we really need to get this done, you know, because this will have a big impact. And again, we're back to the hearts and minds. Get something that's tangible to people and that can be turned around quite straightforwardly, because then they buy into it, and then you can go to the more complex ones. But I think you got to, it's like, you know, walking before you can run. Take those steps, a couple of processes where people get used to the automation part, get used to the digital part, great, then introduce it a bit more, make it a bit more serious.
So I basically lead digital transformation internally to STV organization, as well as this is a service offering that we do give it to our clients. First thing that I've been asking all of our clients is this: do you know where you are in respect to digital practice itself? Because a digital maturity assessment is the first thing I'll be asking our clients to perform, whether it's through us or through another entity. It doesn't really matter. It's knowing where you stand and understanding where and setting prioritization of where you want to improve on is basically the question that I'll be asking, or the first thing I'll be doing.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much, guys. I think we are just coming up to time there now. So I would like to thank all of our panelists for joining today. Really appreciate the conversations, and I hope our audience enjoyed. Ellie, I will pass back to you to close off the webinar for today.
Thanks, Cheryl. Thanks, Kisak.
Thanks very much, guys.
I would just like to say a massive thank you to our moderator, Ursula, to all of our panelists, to our sponsor, FlowForma, and to everyone who's joined us in the audience today. I would like to remind you that you can download the handouts from today's session. That's just located next to the question box. And you will also be receiving a short survey after the session, and we would be grateful if you could take a couple of minutes to complete that. We really hope you enjoyed today's session, and from all of us here at USA Digital Construction Online, thank you and goodbye.